Welcome, new and old friends. My name is 242, and today, Two got us two stories. Both can be either true curse stories or paranormal activity happening in nature. So, turn off your lights, make sure your doors and windows are locked. Things are about to get spooky. When it was clear that the zombie apocalypse was upon us, we knew our best option was to wait it out until they decomposed. What we didn't know was that all that flesh was just holding the skeletons back. The Spirit Tree by Nothing is Solid. So, this is real, but it's not really scary, but it is strange. When I lived in Florida around Jupiter, we had Juno and Marshkini Beach. My whole life I grew up on this beach, and at night some strange things have happened. From UFOs to apparitions, I've always felt a strong natural spirit here. Later in my teenage years, I was often kicked out of my house, anywhere from weeks to months at a time. I lived on these beaches. Most specifically, I almost always stayed at Shower 39. Shower 39 was the heaviest I felt of this natural spirit. I even saw what I dubbed a beach demon there in the trees. Two of my other friends saw this and still talk about this. Still, for whatever reason, I felt safe here and comfortable, sleeping below the shifting canopies of the sea grape forest. The way the beaches are laid out, there is a sidewalk, then a long stretch of sea grape forest that stretches the entire beach, then the beach. I've spent many isolated nights on my own on these beaches from 16 till 23. There was this tree that me and my friends dubbed the Spirit Tree. It was an uprooted tree that appeared on the beach in certain months. It was up on the beach mostly in the winter months. It'd wash up when the storms came, and it'd be on the beach for a couple weeks or a few days. It'd be right where the surf met the beach, as most trees that wash up would be in the surf. Now, what made this tree unique is that it was the same tree. Every time as long as I can remember. It would also wash up in the same general area. From Shower 32 to Shower 44. Most promptly around Shower 39. My personal favorite shower, where I've experienced the strangest things in my life. I'd seen it a lot while I was on some serious psychedelic journeys, but other people who were sober and with me would see the tree and they always freaked out. Because on the rational side, this should not be possible. But here it was, with the most deepest carving remaining on it. The same exact tree months later. You would drive yourself insane trying to figure it out. And around this tree, everyone would feel this vibe of deep respect, mystery, peace, love, and wonder. For some, it would elicit an overwhelming feeling of anxiety. I remember I was with this one girl when I found it one day. She didn't fully believe me, but insisted that we leave. I was climbing all over it, hugging it, looking at all of our old carvings. I was tripping. Eventually, reluctantly, I agreed to keep walking the beach. She later told me she was at one point felt so nervous around it, and she needed to catch her breath. I love the spirit tree, and most of us hippies did as well. It was something that made no sense. The spirit tree showed itself to me a lot when I was in troubling times, and it always made me feel comfortable. However, every strange or paranormal experience I had on that beach, from UFO, ghost, strange alternate states that made no sense, and even one beach demon-like creature, happened after I saw the spirit tree. Still, it never scared me. The spirit tree, anyways. This is one of many of my strange paranormal experiences. This, however, is the most nostalgic, and the thoughts of the spirit tree make me happy as I remember this almost bond I had with it. Many nights alone after getting kicked out of my house, I go to the beach feeling a deep, lonely depression just to find the spirit tree, and it would always lift my spirits. Believe this or not, I promise you that this happens on the beaches of Marchetti and Juneau. And if you find a tree washed up on the beach one late night around shower 39 with carvings all over it looking older than time itself, show your respect to this wonderful, amazing spirit tree if it strikes your fancy. Don't if you don't want to. To many, it's just a washed up tree. But to those of us who know the beach like the back of our hands, this tree is so much more. P.S. I know I sound nuts and like a total hippie, but I have loads of friends who have never touched a drug in their lives who still are in awe and can't explain this. I promise you, it's the same tree, and I like to personify it. I like to think that this tree is some kind of nature spirit, and she knows me, knows my heart, and is happy that I'm keeping her legend alive. And on screen right now, that tree in the water, that is the spirit tree. OP sent me the photo, so I hope you like it. I have a duty to throw a dead body from the top of a tower. To maintain my little sanity, I ignore the shuffling in the plastic bags, the chill of the air from being so high, and the hungry, vicious growls that sound louder with every drop-off. The Curse of the Psycho River by crypticwander. A note from the author. This story is one that I've wanted to write for a while now, but the words have always escaped me. For one, it's true. I know, every story is true, ha ha ha, very scary. This one, however, is as true as it gets, and as everyone knows, writing a series of incredible events while maintaining credibility is damn near impossible. I do invite and even encourage you to look it up on Google after it's finished. The second reason I found that it's difficult is that it's two stories in one. There's a lot of history involved, and though the details differ depending on who tells it to you, my hometown of Biddeford was the first inhabited by Europeans in 1616, making it one of the first places to be visited in America. but the general consensus is the load-bearing beam I will include. Thank you for letting me ramble. Now, for your story. I was born and raised in the city of Biddeford, Maine. The city itself is full of somewhat garbage people, but I wouldn't have wanted to grow up anywhere else. I had many wonderful memories, as the beach was an hour walk away, the backyard was sprawling, and the woods that led down to the river was right next to my house. It runs about 130 miles from New Hampshire and splits the town of Biddeford and Saco, emptying out into the ocean beyond. Most mothers, my own included, did everything in their power to make sure their children didn't go into the water until 3 people died at the beginning of the year. This may sound morbid, and indeed it is, but for good reason. All the children in the cul-de-sac knew bits of information, usually clashing, but I first heard the full story told to me by an old man named Rodney. Rodney was an old Native American man who lived down the other side of my backyard. His grandson Josh and I often played games with each other and became pretty good friends. Rodney was a good-spirited man, always telling us fun stories about people from his lineage, and usually scary ones when we were putting the tents up out back and camped out for the night. It was one such night I heard the curse of the Saco River. Back in the year 1675, Winter Haber, now known as Biddeford, was established by the Europeans. The local Secaucus natives generally welcomed them, and boats would come and go along the Saco River. One such boat carried 3 white men, who were said to be drunk as a skunk and meaner than one too. A woman who had given birth to the chief's sons was upon one of the islands, carrying the child in tow. They decided to have a little fun and tested a story they had once heard. It was said that Native Americans could doggy paddle from birth, and they wanted to find out, most likely making a few bets on it. Despite the woman's screams, they ripped the baby from her arms and threw him into the water. Unsurprisingly, the child had drowned. Some say she went in after him, only to drown herself, others not. What eventually did happen is Chief Sacador, not to be confused with Sakato, found out and placed a curse on the river. Until the day white men clear the banks, the spirits of the river would take 3 lives a year. Some say the 3 were killed right there, but regardless, there was no delegations made. In fact, it was said to ignite violence between the tribe and the Europeans, kicking off the War of King Philip. There was a little bit more to it than that, I'm sure, but it has been about 26 years now, so my memory is a tad bit fuzzy. The only thing I can never forget, in fact, it's probably what caused my terrible lifelong nightmares, is the night he took us out fishing. Conveniently enough, Rodney took us by canoe out to Skelton Dam. It's a popular place for fishing and swimming. In late summer, the sun is warm while being shaded by a large forest around it. And as the sun goes down, the sounds of wildlife makes it an unparalleled place to relax. He had paddled us down the stream for about an hour when finally the night came on. We didn't catch a whole lot, and honestly at 7 years old, I hardly knew what I was doing. But I had fun with Josh, and Rodney was telling us more of his stories of the past. I don't know what time it was, probably 10 or 11, but the fog began to roll across the water. Rodney had made a crack about the spirits making their way from the deep, when all the noise from the bank stopped. There were no insects, birds, or frogs to be heard. Just the quiet sloshing of water on wood. I don't think we even noticed at first, not until we could see the dead serious look on old Rodney's face. He didn't say it, but he was scared. He said something to the effect of, "We better pack it in." So we reeled in our fishing poles and he started the long way back up the river. Being children, Josh and I didn't really panic. Rodney was experienced in the woods, and though he stayed silent, he didn't much let on that something was wrong. He just kept his eyes forward and worked the oars. This went on for a while. The sounds of nature were still silent, and it seemed as though every small sound from one side of the river to the other. The fog was still present, and was growing thicker by the minute. I don't know how Rodney didn't get lost, but I assume it wasn't his first time in conditions such as this. The closer we got, the more we let go of our fear. That is, until the crying began. I couldn't tell from where, but like a gunshot out of the silence, this shrill, high-pitched sobbing rang out from the land. It would be so loud, like it was right next to you, then seem to move away, only to return just as quickly. To make it worse, the sobbing would erupt into insane bursts of laughter. Even thinking about it now makes me shiver. Not a male or a female. It was something I can't possibly find words to match with. As it continued, we started to hear the sounds of something jumping through the forest, easily keeping pace with the boat. I tried to block most of it out, but that's not something that ever goes away. I believe that was about the time Josh and I began to cry ourselves. Ronnie tried to comfort us, telling us to keep our heads down and to cover our ears. But most of his efforts were spent rowing in a panic-driven manner. The tone of his voice was quick and stern, nothing like the tight look on his face, and I believe he was praying. The sob crying stopped after a bit to our relief. However, it was short-lived. A woman's voice shouted out from somewhere, distant, but also close. In a blood-freezing tone, it screamed, "Help me!" I looked out through the fog. It wasn't a woman I saw, however. On the bank to the right, I could make out a thin figure. Not too many details were visible, aside from the long horns that sprouted out from its head, like that of a deer. The image quickly melted back into the fog and disappeared. Once again, "Help me, please!" came from the bank. The opposite one, however, the one closest to us. As this happened, the sound of drums came and quickly crescendoed their way all around us, like that of a dozen or more people playing drums. Rodney told us once again not to look and steer the canoe away towards the center of the river. Like the idiot kid I was, I looked as large green orbs of light began to appear, along with multiple little men. I say men, but they were all much too short, and their shape wasn't quite right. It was almost like a group of monkeys were all lined up along the shore, just staring at us, as the ghastly cry for help continued to follow, switching sides from time to time. I'm fairly certain I had wet my pants by then. I don't think I've ever been so scared in my life, including my current age. Unfortunately, our boat trip through hell wasn't quite over yet. The fog was a constant and would swallow anything almost as quickly as it appeared. As terrifying as the things on the bank were, At least they couldn't get to us. Or so I thought. We must have been pretty close to the boat launch by that point. But before we could get there, the sounds of splashing erupted on all sides of us. The occasional slosh of water told us there was something around our boat, and it wasn't long till the knocking began. It was soft at first, more like something rubbing the side of the canoe. Then it turned into scratching, but they quickly got louder, as if people were pounding their fists against the side. It was getting so bad I thought we were going to tip, and poor old Rodney was rowing like a madman. The panic on his face was clear as day. He was no longer trying to be silent, and I could even see something trying to grab and pull at the oars. These sort of short, black arms that grabbed at whatever they could. Well, we finally made it to the boat launch. Rodney practically threw us on land. He didn't bother with our bags or fishing stuff either. I was somewhat upset the next day, but I can't blame him one bit. We ran to his truck, still hearing drum beats all around us, now coupled with the sound of loud growls. I can't tell you what for sure, but some sort of animals were pacing around the fog on all fours. They kept their distance, thank God, but before we were finally on the road, we were in for one more surprise. The branches and leaves of the trees off to the left of the truck began shuffling. The forest here is thick, so it's hard to see what it was, but some sort of large bird burst through the canopy and shot across the lake. I'd never seen anything so monstrously huge in my life. Rodney later told me he believed it was a thunderbird. I'm not sure, but the wingspan was anywhere from 20 to 30 feet long. Since that night, I stayed away from that river. In fact, I moved halfway across the country. I can't really tell you a whole lot else from that night. I never got many answers myself. I can tell you, however, that I believe in the curse of the Saco River wholeheartedly, as well as its spirits. Do not go into that river, unless of course 3 people have already been found dead. I spent hours replaying and reviewing the footage we shot inside the abandoned hospital, trying to pinpoint what was bothering me about it. Finally, I saw the eyes on the poster at the edge of the screen had moved, for a single frame, to stare directly at the camera, at me. I do hope you enjoyed these 2 stories this evening. If you did, hit that like button and make sure it feels it. If you're new, subscribe and turn that pretty little bell to all notifications. If you'd like to help this channel/podcast, share it with anyone who might enjoy it. And if you'd like to help in other ways, I have Patreon, merch, and PayPal. All the links are in the right places. And of course, I would love a comment, but I gotta get you that Sunday word first. And on screen right now is all the entries from last week, which the word was observer. Thank you guys so much as always. This week's word is reasonable, and I'm going to reasonably think I don't need to put the definition up. So, leave me a comment down below or on Twitter, and you'll be on next Sunday's video. But as always, guys, thank you for watching and listening. It really means the world to me. Sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.